Hey guys, it's Leslie and it's January 2018. And this year I want to explore something with you. I want to talk about and explore food for thought about expectations. Yes, expectations. All of us, no matter what age we are, no matter our background, our race, we all have expectations. We have expectations of ourselves, we have expectations of the government, we have expectations of other people. People that are either in the home or outside the home, we have them. But what I want to talk about this year is what expectations are appropriate and what expectations are not appropriate. And what do we do when those expectations are not met? So, would you join me in that conversation this year? So, what I'd like to do is break that down and each month talk about expectations in different areas. So, for January, I want to talk about expectations as it pertains to friends, to friendships. So, as you look back at your life, from your childhood till now, and you think about your life now as an adult, and think about all the friends that you've had. Some friendships have lasted and stood the test of time. Some friendships go in and out, and some friendships, I wouldn't say they failed, but some friendships ended for whatever reason. It could have been something on your part or something on their part. But I want to explore expectations as it pertains to friendships. Have a couple of notes here. So, when we're talking about expectations, think about some expectations in life in general that are good, appropriate, and right expectations. Some expectations, though, are not appropriate. Sometimes they have stemmed from our upbringing or some hurt that we've experienced or some influence that has been in our life that has caused us to develop expectations that are not appropriate. Can you think of any? Well, I've been challenged over the past 6 months or so, specifically with regard to expectations. There have been lots of expectations I've had in my life that I have had to adjust, and I've had to ask God to show me, what is going on here? Why am I having an issue with this particular expectation not being met? So, as I said, we're going to talk this month in January about friendships. So think about friendships that you've had and some friendships that ended. As I said before, can you think of some reasons why those friendships ended or why they kind of dwindled? What I enjoy is looking back and seeing how there may have been friends that I've had that were super, super close for that particular time because I either was in a particular organization with them or at school with them or some scenario, whether it was work or whatever the situation. And then time passes and we're no longer in that particular organization or geographical area together, so we don't get to see each other as much. But what I enjoy is those opportunities that I am still able to connect with those friends and still maintain that friendship. Although we don't talk all the time, there's lots of friendship quotes that talk about things like that. We don't talk all the time, but that does not mean that we're not as good of friends. There are some cases, though, when on one end of that friendship, when something changes, there becomes some disconnect in expectations, disconnect in communication about one person maintaining the friendship and one person not maintaining the friendship. Have you ever experienced that? Well, I definitely have. So what I have been thinking through is not just in the area of friendships. There's going to be many other areas I want to talk about this year, but with specific regard to friendship. So I wrote down two different areas, and you can write them down if you'd like, or just rewind this and watch it again. But two different areas. So there's the characteristics of a friend, which will transcend that characteristic of that person as an employee, as a wife, as a husband, or whatever it is. So there's characteristics of individuals that we see in our friendships. And then there are categories of friends that you and I have in our lives. So the characteristics of friends that we have now or have had in the past are cheerleader, strategist, loyal. There's those friends that are for a cheerleader, those who are going to cheer you on, who are going to definitely have your back. They're going to spur you on when you have something great going on. There's the strategist who will help you to map out some of your goals and your plans in your life. There's that loyal friend who's going to always stick by you, always going to be reaching out and just letting you know, hey, I'm going to always be by your side. I'm not going to forget about you. I'm going to be loyal. Then there's that brutally honest friend. Most of us have, or either we are that one who's just going to be brutally honest and just break it down for you. Sometimes we don't want to contact that particular friend when we have certain things going on because we don't want to hear them being brutally honest with us. Then there's the mentor type friend. That's the one that we can call to get advice and can help us to kind of work through some difficult times in our lives. Then there's the negative person or negative friend who, no matter what you bring to them, they're going to have some negative perspective, or when you try to talk to them about some aspect of their lives, then they are going to usually say something negative. Then there's the spiteful friend. There's the person who do things out of spite, who it's frustrating, and sometimes we want to just dismiss those people out of our lives because they have that tendency to do that. And there's the toxic friend. Those are the ones that we will typically warn our kids about, or that person that we are mentoring, or we warn our spouse about them, because there's just always this toxicity that comes across whenever they're around, or whenever they're speaking, or the things that they're bringing or suggesting. Then there's the conditional friends. Those are the ones who, are going to be around in good times, but then when something goes down, they don't want to be around, or they decide that they're going to ditch you in the friendship or whatever reason. Then there is the leech. So this one is pretty difficult to kind of navigate because, again, we are sometimes that person, but the leech is the one who is just kind of wanting to know what they can get from you. What do you have to offer them? And if you're no longer giving them that thing that they're wanting, then they're not going to be in your life or be around at that particular time. So those are all characteristics to consider. And if you could maybe write those down or look up some different characteristics, and then I want to challenge you to think about that. I want you to think about it, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself about what type of person or friend are you. Now, I know it's going to be tempting. It's going to be easy to point out and list those things which are positive. But what I want to ask you to do, and what I'm challenging myself to do, is to keep at the forefront of my mind, what of those negative characteristics have I been as a friend in a friendship? So the reason I want to do that is this. So a lot of you know this group that was out in the 90s. It was one of my favorite groups at the time, okay? I was a teenager, and one of my favorite songs, I could say maybe just one of my favorite tunes, was this song, "What About Your Friends? Are they gonna be around? Will they let you down again?" They had that little dance with your friend. Well, so in that song, I was looking at the lyrics of it. And so really what they're talking about, this one particular part that I was honing in on, is that what they were dealing with is the subject of trust. So what she was saying, I believe it may have been T-Boz. So what she was saying in there, she was talking about basically, if my friend is not meeting this particular expectation or not living up to this particular thing that I define as a friend, then I need to be aware. I need to look out for them. I need to look out for those types of people in my life and basically cut those type of people off. Now, hear me. I totally understand how we do have to beware of toxic relationships, people that are bringing us down, etc. But with that particular advice that we hear so often, I'm not quite sure if there is a balanced enough approach to that that helps us to identify where we have been or are currently struggling with one of those characteristics in our own lives. So I'm saying that to say that in our friendships, maybe we need to either go back and look at some of our past friendships or even look at our current friendships and some of the conflicts that we experience with our friends or some of the things that we choose not to be honest and say to our friends that really are letdowns to us about that particular person, or things that have really hurt us, or maybe ways that we have hurt someone else. So we need to consider what our contribution has been in those particular friendships and currently in those friendships. So I don't want to be so quick to judge a person and their characteristics as it pertains to them being my friend and say they're not a good friend or are a good friend. But what I want to do is to be able to talk through some of those things with that friend to say, hey, what are some things that you see in me? Is there something that I have done or am doing currently that you have an issue with? Something that you want to ask me to consider about myself? And then I need to just ask God to search my heart and say, what are some things that I perhaps need to go to my friend or that person in my life and ask them their perspective on something that I did or said? And then even perhaps ask them for forgiveness for something. So yeah, it's a real challenging concept, but I believe that God has a word for all of us as we consider this as we explore this whole topic of expectations. Again, for the month of January, I want to talk about it just in relation to friendship. But throughout the year, I'd like to talk about that in many other aspects of our lives, whether it's in our family, in our marriage relationships, with our with our children, with our co-workers. But what does God really want me to do with those expectations? So that other list that I made for friendship are the categories of friendship. So there's basically 3. You could break them out into more, but there's basically 3 that I came up with. So you have those that are your buddies, those who are the ones that you can get together with, laugh with. Sometimes you get into deep conversations with, but maybe not as much. But they're the ones that you hang out with. And that's completely okay. You need to have those types of friends that can just get you out of the house when you're feeling down or you've been through a lot for that particular month or year or for that season of your life. Then you have the ones who are your confidants. You may not even really hang out with them so much, but those are the ones that either you talk to them about things you're dealing with in your life, or they call you, and it's okay if you're the one calling them or they're the ones calling you, because each of us have gifts and we each have roles in each other's lives. So you have the confidant, the ones that you're going to be going to, you're going to confide in and talk through particular issues that are in your life. Now, if I only have confidants and not buddies, and I only have buddies, or I only have buddies and no confidants, I might need to look at that and make sure that I'm balancing that out in my life. And then you have those who are acquaintances. So they may not fit into either of the first 2 categories, but it's okay to have those as well, because these are the ones who you've known maybe for years, or maybe you met them years ago, and when you see them, it's a delight to see them and catch up, and you have some things that are in common. Now, the issues sometimes arise when you may classify someone as one of these categories, the buddy, the confidant, or the acquaintance, but they classify you as one of the other categories. So, for example, you have a friend who you see as a confidant, and you expect or you want for them to value that role that you see them as. In their eyes, they may see you, or at the season that they're in, may have you in their mind unintentionally or intentionally categorized as a buddy. Or you may expect that this person is one of your buddies, or you expect that they should see you as a buddy, but to them, for whatever reason, and it's okay because everybody comes from the perspective that they come from, right? For whatever reason, you're in the category of acquaintance to them. And where the issue lies a lot of times is when we see those discrepancies and then there is a hurt because it doesn't line up. But what God is challenging me on, and like I said, it's with friendships and then many aspects of life. What he's challenging me on is, that's my perspective. That's how I see it. And I have to be careful putting my expectation on that person and then allowing my unmet expectation to damage or to destroy that relationship, right? So I had that expectation of her or of him, and then it was not met. So I can choose. I have lots of choices on what I could do with that unmet expectation. So I could just accept the fact that this is where this person is, or this is where our relationship is at this time. And then I can move forward and then value the type of relationship that I have with this person. Or I could talk to that person and say, you know what, hey, this is what I was thinking. This actually hurt me. And then have a conversation, walk through it with them. Now that's going to require a lot of prayer a lot of times because we don't know how that could go. We don't know how that person's heart is going to receive what you're trying to say to them. Another thing that I could do is I could confront them, but confront them not in love, right? So I could come to them and I could say, well, you know what? I thought you were going to be this way and you were not this way. So I'm just going to tell you all about yourself and what I thought you should have been. And since you're not that way, I need you to know. And then I'm just going to drop you. Or I need you to be this way, demand that this person be this way, right? That's another option. Another option I have is I could not talk to that person at all, but I can go tell everybody else about that unmet expectation, about that hurt, about that flaw in this person's life from my perspective, right? I don't know if there's any This Is Us fans out there, but that episode coming back from the winter break this year, season 2, when the Pearson family was in that room and everybody was just shouting and yelling, and they were all basically talking about their perspective of their childhood, their perspective of what they saw of each other. And it was difficult for each of them to really just listen and understand what the other person's perspective is. Instead, they wanted to just, number one, talk about their perspective only. And then number two, there was a lot of accusation. So that's what we want to be careful of, is accusing others, abandoning them because of a hurt, and then also going and spreading all that information to other people. We have to be careful. Now, as that other person who's hearing this information, have you ever had somebody call you or text you, however they got in touch with you and tell you about whatever this person did that was supposed to be my friend and they did this? Well, we as the other person listening also have choices of what we could do. We could either be the peanut gallery and just say, ooh, what? Oh, yeah, I cannot believe they did. What? They did what? Oh, I don't blame you. You have to cut them off, right? Right? Or we could be the one maybe that brutally honest friend and say, hey, you know what? Maybe there's another way for you to think about that. Maybe you could kind of balance out your perspective of what you're dealing with that friend. That takes a lot of bravery, because usually the person talking to us, we want to join in with them wherever they are in their hurt. Some people even call that, that's a loyal friend. If you call them and they're sharing all of their hurt and their pain and their judgment about someone else, if you go right there with them in that, then you say, oh, that's my loyal friend, because they go right there with me and they're on my side. But maybe we don't just need those types of people in our lives. Maybe we need the ones who are not going to just be loyal to us in our mess and our stinking thinking, as Joyce Meyer says. But maybe we need those ones who are going to challenge us. So that last choice that I said that I'm going to mention, that what we could do when we've been hurt, disappointed, when our expectation has not been met by a friend, is that we could choose just to say nothing, just to retreat. Don't say anything to other people. Don't say anything to that friend. And just say, hey, they let me down. They hurt me. I'm done. I'm done with that person. And then we are alone in a sense, because our expectation hasn't been met, but we didn't verbalize it to that person. And then we begin to build up a wall. We begin to build up bitterness. And then we say, well, you know what? I am not going to let that happen to me again. I mean, there's even lyrics in the song, What About Your Friends? It talks about that, So we have to be careful with that in our own friendships, and then also when others come to us with the issues that they are having with their friends, right? So as we deal with these particular issues of friendships, we need to ask ourselves some questions. So we have these expectations of friends. We need to find out, what are our expectations based on? So that example that I just gave of being hurt, and that last option that you have is just to shut down and just say, I'm not going to let a person do that to me again. Well, that actually builds expectation on the next friendship. So with that next person that we meet, then because of that past hurt or that past situation that we had with that person, now we're going to say, when I meet this new person, I'm going to expect them not to do any of that stuff that the other friend did. Because the first sign of it, I'm out. I don't want to feel that way. And the reason why we're saying I'm out, I don't want to feel that way, is because we never fully dealt with that hurt. We never confronted it with that person. We never talked through it with a confidant who was going to be brutally honest with us and challenge us, right? So then that sets us up to continue to have these certain expectations as we go forward. What do you do when your expectations are not met? My question for you, what do you do when your expectations are not met? So before we go, I want to ask you these 4 questions. When you're in this situation with a friend, number 1, where did your expectation come from? Your expectation that your friend should have done X, Y, Z, or should do X, Y, Z. Then ask yourself, what part of that expectation is correct? Because like I said, many expectations are proper. What part of it is correct? The second part is, what part of this expectation is not correct? That part does require some searching of your heart, requires prayer sometimes. It requires speaking to someone who we trust to give us advice that is based on the Word of God. It's based on reason and not based on just trying to be loyal and join us in the dumps where we are. And then the last question we have to ask ourselves is, what am I going to do now that this expectation was not met? You have lots of choices of what you're going to do. But what we have to do is be careful, and we have to understand that what we choose to do when that expectation is not met is going to affect our future relationships, whether it's our future friendships or our relationships with our spouse, with our significant others. So please choose carefully. And please know I am right here with you in exploring this whole idea of expectations. And I am praying through it and asking God to show me his perspective, because that's really what we want, right? At the end of the day, we don't want things to work out just based upon our perspective, but we want to get his perspective in all things. So thank you guys for listening, and I look forward to talking with you throughout the rest of this month about expectations as it pertains to friendships. And the rest of this year, we're going to explore some of the other areas of expectations. Have a good one. Bye-bye.